Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Daddies of SA. Today is a very, very exciting day. As you can see, it's still a bit chilly, but yeah, it's going to be a bit warm with our guest today. So this gentleman, I think I met him in a group called Dope Black Dads, yeah. But I've known him not personally from his professional life. We've seen him do amazing things. And once he comes through, I think you're going to see who exactly we're talking about. But I'm just going to give you a brief bio about him. He's a writer, an editor, a speaker, content strategist, an entrepreneur. And something I read, he says he's an all-round jack of all trades. So I want him to explain a bit about that. But yeah, without any further ado, welcome to the one and only Kojo Baffoe. Give you some horns, Baba. Give you some horns. How are you? Close the door. There we go. How's that? Okay, I'm checking your levels.
I tend to speak very loud, so.
Are you allowed? No, I'm gonna pick it up. I'm gonna pick it up. So before we start, we've got a tradition here called Volam Lomo. Okay. So I got you some coffee. Mm-hmm. So we make a cheers, have a sip, and then speak freely.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think talking is not a problem I have. But
I realized it. And thank you so much for coming through, man.
No, thanks for inviting me. Very random bumping into each other in a supermarket.
Yeah. No, the thing is, since I said we're in that group.
Yeah.
So I see all the guys and I'm speaking to Labs. We have a common as a friend.
Yeah.
And I could see you guys having a conversation. Oh, I'm like, oh, no. And you see all these guys that you've known in the industry, within the marketing, advertising. Oh, this guy's in the group. Okay, cool. These are also guys who are interested in being dads. And when I saw you then at the supermarket, I was like, I'm going to approach this guy, bro. And I only did that because I knew you had a spot for dad topics.
Yeah.
Then I was like, I know. But generally, I wouldn't just go up to anyone, you know? But
yeah, and I mean, I think that's the weird and the weird thing and the beauty of the world that we've created. It has its own issues.
Yeah.
But because we see where the overlap is, right? Mm-hmm. So like you talk about Lebo as a common friend. Previously, you wouldn't see that overlap.
No.
And you therefore wouldn't have, because I'm also not a person to just approach people I don't know. I'm happy to talk, but I'm more of a homebody and an introvert. I hate cold calling. I love email.
Sales won't work for you.
No. Email was created for me. I'm like, why do we need to talk? I can just email you.
Yeah.
But because there are these communities out there, and as we navigate them, we find that, oh wait, there's overlap. Like there's, I'm close with so and so. And you're close to so-and-so, and that becomes a point of, like an inflection point or a point of overlap.
Yeah. It goes back to that 7 degrees. Like, we literally know one or two people that can connect me to you very strongly.
What was it? Kevin Bacon's 6 degrees of separation.
Did I say 7?
Yeah.
It's actually 6.
It's 6 degrees of separation. This actor, Kevin Bacon, it started when he... I'm revealing my age, but I have no problem with my age, actually.
Dude, but you still look cool, though. You still look cool. It counts.
My children don't think so, but that's...
It works that way.
I suspect we'll get into that.
It works best that way, yeah.
But that whole... He's like, with 6 degrees of separation, he found he had connection with literally everyone in Hollywood.
What?
Because it's like, okay, I worked with this actor on this movie. That actor worked with that person on that movie. And therefore that's like 3 degrees of separation. And if you look at our world, and this is before the internet, like if you think about this country, you'll find that with anyone, it doesn't matter who it is, there's maybe 4, maximum 5 degrees of separation between you and that person. I mean, like, you could... No. The president is kind of easy.
No, even right? The president.
Yeah, so the president is
And that
kind of
would be
easy.
like the most far-fetched person to be connected to.
Yeah, and you'll find that maybe it's three. I mean, between myself, I mean, I could say between myself and the president, I know people who know him.
Yes.
So it's not even a stretch. It's not even like 3 steps down. It's like,
It's in your reach.
yeah. And yeah, that existed before, but I think with these digital platforms, it's made
It's brought
it
us even
smaller.
closer.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, man, that's actually crazy to think that we could be connected to anyone in the world that easily.
Absolutely.
That easily.
I had a random moment years back when Thabo Mbeki was president, and I mean I'd interacted with him like briefly, but even if it was, I knew people who knew him really well, and then like George Bush, he knows George Bush.
And you know Tao.
And I know,
President
I've met the president. So let's say it's literally 1 degree, and the president knows George Bush.
And George Bush possibly knows anyone who's of influence in the world.
Yeah.
So it could be like 3-4 degrees. Yeah. You know what, guys? Think about that. And don't actually be afraid to say, I want to reach out to somebody. Actually, you're going to help me with something about that. You know what? Let's go back before we jump on this 6 degrees of conversation. I read that you're half Ghanaian, half German. And possibly I could say Omosotho because you were raised in Lesotho.
I'm half German, half Ghanaian from Lesotho,
Half
and live in South Africa.
big part Mosotho.
And live in South Africa. Lesotho raised me.
Yeah. Just give us a background on that mixture of Kojo and how he landed in Lesotho.
Well, I mean, in terms of my parents and where they were from, I mean, I always say, like, I had no say or influence of where or how they hooked up.
You have no idea.
I mean, I have an idea, but it's so often people say, "Oh, that's so cool, that's so exotic," and I'm like, "Look, my parents happen to be 2 different nationalities from 2 different continents, but the world brought them together. Like I had no control over it to be able to go, oh, this is a thing." Let's say a thing of value. And I say a thing of value because when I first came to South Africa, I was, 19, and I went to varsity in Durban. And I found that the minute people heard what my background was, it made me special, or it made me different.
Use the word exotic.
Yeah. But it was also, I mean, I went to varsity in 1992.
Yeah. And you in South Africa.
In South Africa.
Okay.
And I had experiences where I am treated a particular way when I'm thought to be
something else.
Colored from South Africa.
Yeah.
Versus when people find out what my background is. And it could be literally I interact with somebody and they interact with me a particular way which is tied to stereotype. And then I leave the room.
They explain.
And then an hour later I come back and they now have new information. And how they treat me becomes different because I am not like the locals. I am not like It's like you're not like other black people.
Ish, and those right. Things, you know.
So I mean, like I said, I was 19 years old, but my father studied in Germany. So he, in the I think early 60s, he ended up in Germany. This is right after not long after Ghana's independence. And Ghanaian students were being sent across the world to gain skills to be able to
from the government.
Yeah. But he, from what I understand, he eventually got a scholarship, so stayed on to further his studies. So he was initially, I think, was tied to printing, but he eventually got a scholarship. He did economics, did his master's, I think, in economics and development studies and that sort of stuff, and then
Didn't fall far from the tree, ne?
I followed the same route, but yeah, and then he met my mother, who was German, got married. I was born, and then because I was alive then, we moved to Uganda because my father got a teaching job at Makerere University in Uganda, and my mother passed away in Uganda in a car accident, and we ended up in Lesotho.
You and your dad?
With my father.
Were you the only sibling by then? Still,
I have an older sister. My father was married before my mother. Okay. So I have an older sister. She was in Ghana. But when we moved to Lesotho, she then moved down to Lesotho. And then my father remarried in Lesotho. We went to Swaziland for a short period. Had an uncle of mine, the family were in Lesotho, and that's one of the things that he was a law professor. So that's one of the things that kind of, I guess, made it easier for my father to think about going to Lesotho to teach.
Oh, okay.
They moved to Swaziland, or Eswatini, and then we moved there for about 2-3 years and then moved back to Lesotho. And that's, my father settled there. That's where home was. That's where my father's buried.
It's like you're a nomad in a way, Luena, at heart, ne? Based on the upbringing.
Weirdly not. So, I mean, I'm talking about all this movement, and all this movement happened probably before I was 5.
Okay. But you remember it clearly.
I mean, I remember bits and pieces. There's a whole patch I do not remember. So I mean, memory is flawed. Sometimes we tell ourselves stories so much that we start to see them as memory when they were actually kind of created in our own minds. So memory is like a weird thing. Like, you can't always trust memory. But I do have little flashes from maybe the age of 3-4 years old. I don't remember a lot in terms of extended periods from before 4-5 years old.
Okay. No, you're right about something, because I think even my memory, when you're in grade 1, how old would you be? You'd probably be 5 or 6. Yeah. In South Africa. Yeah. So then my memory is quite clear. Certain, obviously, instances, but it's quite clear from there on. Prior to that, I don't remember much.
So you'll have you'll have flashes like I'm talking about, and I'm thinking about it, and I'm getting flashes of certain moments, like a visual of a moment. But also, I mean, I wrote a book, and I read a lot and I write a lot. But one of the things that I realized, especially when I was doing that, is that some of these things is impacted by how you wish, especially as you get older, how you wish it had been. If it's something that you've told, if it's a story you've told a lot, you'll find that you start to add little bits and pieces in that actually went there. And it's not a conscious thing. It's not like, it's impacted by how you felt in that moment.
It's the wishes you wanted.
Yeah, how you felt in the moment, the wishes, I like to tell, I tell stories, and that's how I've built my career, even as a writer. And I find that if I tell a story enough times, I can tell it the exact same way, every single time without thinking about it. It becomes packaged.
It's like practice in a way.
Yeah, so it becomes packaged.
Yeah.
I find the right words, then make it sound cool. But in crafting it mentally, am I not embellishing certain aspects? Or am I not leaving out certain aspects? Or am I not adding certain... It's like the broken telephone thing, right?
Correct. I was like, you're crafting it now to
you're doing
suit.
that. Yeah, you're doing that within yourself. So also writing a book where I was sharing a lot of my experiences and what I learned from those experiences. I had to acknowledge and realize that, do you know what? This is not fact. I believe I'm
It's
writing
emotion and feeling.
I believe I'm writing fact and I'm writing truth. But by nature of being a human being with a memory, I cannot guarantee that's exactly how each thing happened.
You know, and I want to chat about your book. But this, I just want to track back when you mentioned you and your dad now are the only two. You moved to Ghana with your, to Lesotho with
Yeah.
your sister. How was that relationship with just your dad at the time as you land in Lesotho? Now it's like the three of you. How's your dad?
My father was
Your
my only
relationship,
parent. My sister came. She didn't travel with us to Lesotho. She came afterwards.
Yeah, joined you guys.
So I think when we landed in Lesotho, it's just myself and my father.
And you how old here?
I was maybe somewhere two,
Okay,
3 years,
still
3 years old. So my father has been my only parent. He's remarried, and I've had. I don't use the word step.
Yeah, they're your siblings.
So there's my siblings, and then there's my siblings' mother, because eventually my father they got divorced.
Okay.
But she was my mother for probably 10 years of my life. But at the end of the day, the only parent I had consistently, and I was lucky that I had him till I was in my 40s, early 40s, was my father.
And how was the relationship?
I'm my father's son. The relationship was, I guess, as relationships go, it has ups and downs. But my father is he was probably the most dominant feature in my life. So, I mean, until he transitioned, we talked every week. I mean, he was in Lesotho, I was in Joburg. We talked every week. I started working for my father at a very young age. So those patches of a relationship where it felt just like it felt like it was more a business relationship in terms of the conversations always about the office and the businesses and all of that. I was also fortunate enough to be old enough to start to see my father differently. So when you are young, I mean, as a teenager, I rebelled and
Typical stuff.
Yeah, we had periods where we weren't talking, and he had 5 kids, so he's raising 5 children, but when I left Lesotho to come to Joburg, I mean, it took a while, and that was probably, I always say it's probably the biggest disappointment for my father, because I was groomed to take over the family business, and I was working full time.
He set up a business in Lesotho.
We had multiple businesses, so I started working in those 12, 13, doing errands. Eventually, he started with a management consulting company, so as 15, 16, I was doing research for him and typing up his writing and working on proposals. But it was when I moved to Joburg. It's actually when I got married.
Yeah.
So when I got married, he slowed down the nagging me to come back home.
Which was mainly about come run this stuff.
Yeah. But our relationship in his last, 15 years, I think became a lot more balanced, because, I was married, see, I was settled here, and then my children were born, and so I was a sounding board. And I was a sounding board from the age of like 15, 16. So, I mean, his last years, the relationship was a lot more balanced. Like we would talk about, what I'm struggling with or what he's struggling with. But also kind of being Generation X and him being, he was 81 when he passed. Our conversations, I guess, were different.
They have to be.
But, so, we went, first time I told my father I loved him, I was tipsy. And it was New Year's
At what
Eve.
age?
I was 29. And it was on the phone.
What do you think provoked that?
He's like, yeah, me too. It was New Year's Eve, boss. I was heading out for the night. I phoned at 11 because
in December, boss.
Yeah, because in those days, you remember, in those days you don't have. If you try to call anytime from quarter to 12 till 2, you can't get through. Messages don't go through.
Yeah.
Because the networks used to
Everyone,
get blocked.
it's flooded.
So I phoned him heading to a party in Midrand, a club in Midrand. I think Tebe had a club in Midrand. No, was it Huzu? Yeah, it was Huzu.
Sounds like Huzu.
And this was 90. It was 98. I think 98 going into 99.
Yo, Kojo, bro, I was still a lady then.
Yeah, well, it's all right. I forgive you. I forgive you.
Why are you forgiving me?
But yeah, and literally I was talking to him on the phone. I was like, yeah, no, I'm just calling to wish you a happy new year, blah, blah, blah. No, I hope you have a good evening, blah, blah, blah. Oh, I love you. And he's like, yeah, me too.
It's like a slip out.
Yeah, he's like, yeah, me too. I'm like, shut up.
Life goes on.
I believe that in my family, and for better or for worse, it has its own issues that I'm still dealing with. But where I grew up was, I guess love was demonstrated as opposed to said, but demonstrated also within certain kind of confines. It's like,
by your father, example, as well as your mom.
As well as a family, just in general, even with my friends. So, for example, your father passes away.
Mm-hmm.
I may not necessarily be that shoulder that you can cry on.
Yeah.
But I will show up. I'll be there.
Yeah, that is love.
I'll work.
That's
right?
love. Yeah.
And that's the kind of house I grew up in. And it was also strangely a male-led house. So my father got divorced from my younger brother and sister's mother when I was 15, 16.
Mm-hmm.
And we all stayed with my father.
Mm-hmm.
So the household, and my older sister was already by then away. So it was a male-led household.
So you okay, and your younger siblings are boys, girls?
I got 2 brothers and a sister.
Okay, so mainly they are men in the house.
Yeah.
And
so
led by men.
it would be my sister with the
3
4
guys. Or 4 of you guys.
with my father. And I've realized also as I've had children and as I've grown older, I've realized how that has impacted how I do things and how I see the world. And having a son now in particular, who's a teenager, I see some of the gaps in my emotional development, if I can put it like that.
I'm gonna come to your kids and your son, and I like where you were going with this, but I just want to maybe for this segment just to conclude on your relationship with your father. So it was male led, and how was it in terms of being a teenager? Any outside of obviously him saying come to work and you were getting that relationship, but was there any other, I'll call it a nurturing in a fatherly way of let's speak as father and son? Did you guys have that?
My father and I talked about a lot of stuff. We didn't necessarily talk emotionally, but I mean, the basis of my relationship with my father is discussion. Like it's
It was practical.
but it's practical, but it's also like about the world. Like my father grew up in a Ghana that went from being the Gold Coast to Ghana when he was in his early 20s. So he was born into a colonial country and then was there for independence, and was led by Kwame Nkrumah, who is, for at least for me in terms of how I was raised, possibly what Nelson Mandela is for South Africans. Like, and Kwame Nkrumah was very much a part of the Pan-Africanist movement. So I was raised with Pan-Africanist ideologies and values, and those are some of the things that we talked about. Like we, would talk politics, would talk just kind of the world, our place in it. So we had a lot of, like I said, we had a lot of discussions. And then working with him, where, in those days, he used to write everything by hand. So a proposal, a report, everything was written by hand.
But it was the time. It was the time.
And then it's typed up on a typewriter.
Which you'd do.
So he had a secretary, but at some stage, that's what I do. Also, so I mean, when I went to university and I studied economics and marketing and business administration, but it was like to complement or to create a foundation to what my father had already taught me.
So you already knew a lot practically. By the time you went to varsity, it was just kind of getting that stamp.
Yeah, there was that, and it was also basically just kind of creating a foundation across the board. Because also my degree was very varied. I mean, I tell the story a lot. So my father, when I was like 15, was like, what do you want to do with the rest of your life?
At 15?
Yeah. And
hard man.
And he was like, so I said to him, I want to do what you do. And he said, what do I do? And my understanding of a management consulting was you help other businesses be better. And so then my father, who had been a lecturer for many years, teaching economics, sociology, African studies, then went, okay, then these are the subjects you will do. And my degree was designed to give me a working foundation in a relatively broad range of subjects. So
Correct.
I did business information systems for 2 years. I did commercial law for 2 years. I did accounting for a year and stats for a year because me and numbers don't get along.
You're wordsmith.
I majored in economics. I only needed 2 majors. I did 3. And it's not because I'm an overachiever, just like each one complemented the other.
Yeah.
And I mean, at the stage when I was in varsity, we had management consulting company. We had a shop selling hair products and hair equipment. We had an insurance brokerage, although I think by then it had been shut down. My father, before that, had started a magazine, which he shut it down, and then years later it became a weekly newspaper. When I finished varsity, I got home, and he says to me, listen, I've got an arrangement, I've developed an agreement with a organization in South Africa called Denel Informatics, which was, after 94, the Denel was split into, there was like the military wing and then the commercial wing.
Got you.
So the planes and tanks and software and everything else went to
one side,
was separate into a company called Infoplan, And then there was Delan Informatics, which was like they did software and products. So things like ID cards.
To the public.
ID cards, it was mainly business to business. So fleet
Okay.
management software,
Oh,
library
B2B,
management
okay.
software, hospital management software, passports, all of that. And my father, he started this IT company because we were now Denel Informatics partners for Lesotho. So I get home from varsity and he's like, me, I'm old, you're young, you can figure out these computer things.
And he landed that business.
Yeah. And so that's one of the businesses we started. But my degree was designed for me to be able to jump between sectors. Because if you think about it, it's different sectors.
It is.
IT,
Economics.
but it's also
There's
IT.
law, IT.
It's IT, it's media, it's retail.
Okay.
I was even helping hair salons in Lesotho professionalize and bringing in basins and helping them set up an association. So my degree gave me enough to be able to jump between
Professions.
different industries.
Industries, I suppose. Yeah.
So when you're
It's still in the management space if you think about it.
yeah. So, but when you introduce him, you would talk about the jack of all trades, and I always joke and say I'm a professional jack of all trades.
Yeah, actually,
So
that's
I don't
what you're
specialize. I'm not specialized in any particular area, but I was trained to be able to apply certain principles. It's like basic business principles, regardless of industry,
Correct.
and being able to kind of move between those. So that's the degree that my father
Pushed you into.
Well, he didn't push me into it. So I was asked a
Advised,
question.
rather.
I was asked a question. I gave an answer, and when the answer was in his area, it's like, okay, well, to work in this area, this is what you need to do.
This is the discipline you need to have.
Yeah.
Wow. You know what? It was very, I think, futuristic of your dad at the time.
Yeah.
Without even maybe knowing.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, the Dion Chang used to call it the slashy, and he used to do this talk around.
Which is the thing now.
Yeah, around.
But you were a
slashies.
slashy then.
Yeah. And I remember the first time I was at a presentation and Dion was talking about this thing, and a friend of mine who knew me quite well was like, dude, it's like you're the original slashy. So that's why I say I call myself a professional jack of all trades.
I get it.
And it's interesting in the world today, like you're saying. So we went from, we got to the stage where it was about hyper specialization. And I've never kind of been in that space. And for years, there were patches when I'd think about getting a job, and my experience would never be enough because
You were slashy.
also because how experience is defined. So if I'm going for a marketing manager job or a marketing director job, and they say we want 8 years of experience, often what they mean is they want 8 years of experience
In that one particular thing.
working this particular way.
Yeah.
I've started and closed companies. I have worked for other people. I've done marketing for 15 years.
Holistically.
Right? Just in terms of, sometimes it's just hustling. Like, I've started this business. I need to get this business out there. But because you can't ring fence it,
It becomes a challenge for
then
them.
it becomes a challenge. And so for many years I was told, you're too much of a generalist. And now, like you're saying, there is a space for
Slashies.
There's a space for generalists. There's also, even if you specialize, it's important to start to understand other spaces. You don't have to be an expert in them, but it's being able to, because
there's linkages in these things.
and often innovation and creativity and solutions will come from a totally different way of looking at it. Like, I don't know, like a doctor who paints, and then one day they realize that
He'd come up with something.
you know, and you're not painting because it's like, okay, I need to paint so that I can be a better doctor. It's like it fulfills something in you, but then you realize that one day you realize that
there's a solution.
There
from
is
the
something.
other.
There is something there.
Yeah. I get what you're saying, and the world was not ready then for.
No, it
slashing.
wasn't.
It wasn't. Ready.
I mean, it was designed for specialists.
Yeah.
And so I think the important thing is always understanding that there's a space for everyone. So there's always been this thing kind of, let's focus here, we need more of this, we need more of that. And, jack of all trades, master of none.
Which was under a bad connotation back then.
And it still is, right? To a certain extent. And funny enough, and I don't remember it, one must go and research it again, the phrase is actually longer and says what happened is that somebody picked out literally that part,
section,
and that's what gives it that negative connotation. But there's actually more to it. But there's a space for, there's a space for a jack of all trades. There's a space for a specialist.
Yes. Agreed.
None is better than the other.
They should be complementary, actually.
Yeah. So the problem is that with these things, it often comes with a judgment. Right? So the reason why I go and say I'm a professional jack of all trades is because I've reached the stage where it's like, even if you judge me on it,
I still deliver.
It doesn't impact on my ability to live the life and build the life and do the work that I want to do. Whereas when I was younger, it maybe would have had a greater impact on
self-esteem, maybe?
Self-esteem, but also my being able to kind of do what I need to do. So one of the things that I realized years ago is, so my life is dependent on my doing the work.
Right? That's the provision.
It's direct. So there's nobody, and for large patches of my life, it's been like that. There's nobody paying me a salary.
You need to create.
There's no team around me where if I drop the ball,
everything stops.
Somebody else can pick it up and carry it. With me, it's like the buck stops with me. And years ago, I grappled with that a lot more because I would then question my ability. So I lectured at Damlin. I did a couple of modules there. And I remember the first time I set a test and 70% of the people failed. Now I'm like, okay, does that mean I'm the problem?
Because you're the common factor.
I'm the common factor.
Yeah.
And the 70% of them, it's not like 10% where you're like, oh, okay.
But then there's also the other conversation of why did this 30 get it right?
So, but when you are the person, so I was standing there going, maybe I shouldn't do this. Automatically I'm thinking the problem is me. I'm not going, okay, maybe, the 30% got it. The 30% got it, so I must be doing something right.
Because it means some people can understand this.
So it's immediately, okay, I'm the problem.
Yeah.
And I wanted to stop. And my wife was the one like, dude, just, you keep going. And then I later discovered it wasn't me. But my initial reaction, because
the buck stops with you.
Because my livelihood depends on my belief and my ability and my capability.
Yeah.
And the minute there's any doubt, that can have a profound and direct impact
consequence
on me being able to put food on the table and
create provision for the house,
keep the roof over the over my family's head. And I've had to go through that to get to the stage where, like I said, I can call myself a professional jack of all trades because I know what I do, I know what I can do, and I go out and I do that, and because I work for myself, I work from my house, and I've been very deliberate about what I will do and what I won't do, and I've been very deliberate about the life that I've crafted for myself today.
So with that said, would you say you have parallels to your dad? Would you say you're a workaholic?
No, I used to be.
And you know where I'm going with this, because I read something so, I don't know how to put it, but like it was so touching, or rather unheard of, where you gave up this life of being busy. And you know, we all love being busy.
Sure.
And you changed it to focus on your kids. What happened? Why that? What happened?
Okay, so the first part first.
Yeah.
I was raised by a workaholic. My father was always
Correct. Hence the parallels.
working. My father was always working, and I never felt like I worked hard enough.
Because of what he had achieved.
Because, not even what he had achieved, because of the way he worked. Like, my father's life was up and down. Like, there were good patches, there were bad patches, business-wise. When you run your own businesses, like, that's the reality,
Yeah.
right?
It takes away from the family time.
Yeah. But my father always worked. Like, I grew up in a house in Maseru where you had the little window above the door.
Yeah. I see it.
That you could literally, you had a string to pull open a little bit.
Yeah.
And my
Get some light or air.
bedroom and my father's bedroom faced each other. And I knew that if I rolled over and I slept on a bunk bed for a while, my brother was on the bottom and I was on the top, I knew that 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, when I roll over, there's going to be that rectangular band of light. Because my father would wake up at 2 o'clock to work. And then he would take a nap at like 5:30, and then be up at 6 and take us to school, and then go to the office. And then he's at the office the whole day.
Sure.
And then, as we're a little older, like, we would walk to the offices and then somebody would drop us off at home. Or my siblings I would walk home or go home with friends, particularly when I was like my mid-teens and late teens. And he would get home at like 7 o'clock, sit down, have a supper, fall asleep on the couch.
It's pushed.
And then I'm like, at 9, I'm like, dude, go sleep. Yeah, and
it seemed normal.
And that's how he lived and that's how he worked. So I never felt like I worked hard enough. And after I moved here and I was kind of doing different things, when I wasn't working and I didn't have work and I didn't have something to do, I always felt guilty.
Makes sense.
But it took me a while to get to the point where it's like, do you know what? Actually, that's not a healthy state. Which then leads up to, so I was working at Destiny Man. I was the editor there. I was always traveling.
It was a good, busy life.
Even when I was home, I was writing because often I didn't get a time to do my writing during the week.
Because you're traveling.
I'm traveling, I'm doing other things like editors, you're doing sales, you're doing meetings. There's a whole lot to it other than just kind of reading words.
Yeah.
And a lot of editors you find don't actually write a lot, whereas I was writing as well. So
as well as doing the other stuff.
Yeah. And so on a weekend, I'd sit and then catch up on my writing. And then one day I realized that I was living a parallel life to my family. They were living a life. They were living our family life.
You were on your own.
And I was on my own, and they accommodated me. And I mean, I think my daughter was about 2. My son was about 6. And I just kind of, so my cliched line is presence with a C over presence with a T. So presence over presence.
I got you. No, I'm here.
And
fully aligned to that.
And I was like, okay, so I'm working for my family.
And you were so in this space, you were You were the T.
Yeah.
You were the T.
Yeah. I saw my children when I dropped them off at school in the mornings. And then I saw them again when I dropped them off at school in the morning.
And birthdays and presents.
Yeah. And it stopped making sense for me in terms of, okay, if I say I'm working for my family, but I never see my family.
What are you really working for?
How am I working for my family? So that's one of the main reasons I eventually left. I mean, also at the time, there was internal stuff that I was
going through.
There was additional kind of drama and work politics and that sort of stuff. I was also, I was tired all the time. I was running all the time. And I mean, the one day, my older sister's a GP. And the one day I pitched up at the office and I got a pain here, like my solar plexus.
Mm-hmm.
Got this pain.
Mm.
So I phoned my sister. And I'm on Twitter, early days of Twitter, I tweet.
To her?
I tweet in general.
Yeah.
As we did, I've got this weird pain my chest solar plexus. And then I phoned my sister and I'm like, dude, this is what's going on. And I was 41? And I'd been running. I was close to 42 and I'd been running for 2 years straight, non-stop. And around that time, there were quite a few other prominent guys who, this was when kind of everybody in their early 40s all of a sudden were having heart attacks.
Shite.
And she says, go to the hospital. So I jump in the car and I drive to the hospital.
Immediately after the call?
And fortunately, it wasn't a heart attack. But it was such severe heartburn that it was giving me chest pains. And it was because of the life I was living.
I was about to say linked to stressful living.
Stress, not eating, not sleeping right, all of those things. So I then, and then I also read a book that talked about lifestyle design. So I was already kind of in this mindset. It's a guy called Tim Ferriss who wrote this book.
Tim
Ferriss.
Okay.
He wrote this book called The 4-Hour Workweek. And I was already starting to think about all of that. You can design your life. You can design your life
how you want it to be.
Including retirement. So you don't have to wait till you're in your 60s to retire. There's ways of living life differently as long as you're deliberate about it. And that's what the book opened me up to. Okay. So that's when I started. So all of those things kind of came together in this moment where I then kind of left.
Gave you the aha.
Left that job. I'm helped by the fact that I leave places, not badly, but I always advise people to, if you're in a space and if you're in a job, for example, where you're not happy, for example, it's not fulfilling. I'm always okay, well, lay a runway for yourself. Think about what it is that you want to do. Mm-hmm. And then plan towards it and work towards it. So if you want to play the piano, right?
Yeah.
You want to play in a band. I mean, it's probably the worst analogy. Learn how to play the piano while you're working.
Give it some time, as little as whatever.
And then start to have the conversations about places that maybe you can play and start to line those up. And if you get some gigs, maybe do the gigs on the weekends. So work on whatever it is that you're working towards while you're still working. And then build yourself a little nest egg so that you know that when you step out of here, you can cover yourself for the next 3 months or the next 6 months, etc.
Cushion it.
Yeah. So that's the advice I always give.
Nah.
And that's the advice I never take. So I'll walk in and be like, guys, this is not working. So I'm out. I mean, with a place
cold, basically. Yeah. That's what you're saying.
So with a place like Destiny, man, I gave notice, and there's the stuff. there's a whole bunch of stuff in there, but there I feel like I did all the things I needed to do. I gave appropriate notice. I was even willing to serve longer notice because
Until they can replace.
because I understand the business and even work with the person replacing me. But other places, I've literally gone, okay, I am not going to work on this contract, which means that I'm out of contract, which means that Friday is my last day on a Tuesday. And
and you're out.
And I don't have a cent in the bank account.
Yeah.
I don't know how end of the month is going to be dealt with. But it always
Kind of works out.
I've learned that I kind of always fall on my feet. It can be painful for long periods of time. But yeah, that's how I do it.
Just I wanna track back a little bit. So now you obviously left to focus on your family as well as yourself.
Yeah.
Holistically. Just moving back, when you found out that you guys were pregnant, where were you and what went through your mind?
I always wanted kids.
Yeah.
And my wife will even tell you the story about, I always wanted kids. I wasn't sure about the mother having a partner. I wanted the children. I didn't know if I wanted what came with it.
As in create a nuclear setup.
Yeah. So having children was easier for me than the idea of having children was easier than the idea of getting married.
Yeah.
Because I was raised by my father, so I'm like,
it's normal.
As a man, I can raise my children if I want to, if I want to raise
So
my
it
children.
played a big role then.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
So we had struggled. So we struggled we lost a baby, and we lost a baby in our first year of marriage, and we struggled for 3-4 years, and went through artificial insemination,
Medical intervention.
yeah, nutrition. Like we went through 2-3 doctors through that whole process, and reached the point where it was like, hey, okay, if it's meant to happen, it'll happen, because we'd done everything. Like we'd done all the things that we felt we could do. Finding out, I mean, when we found out, my wife was already like 3 months pregnant.
Even her finding out 3 months later.
Yeah. So, I mean, she'd gone on holiday. It was a Christmas. She'd gone on holiday to Egypt.
Tries to sip something.
Egypt with a friend, came back. I'm like, I know the holiday was good. You're looking a little chubby there.
Hey, man, you're brave, eh?
Nah. And
Living on the edge.
And then I was doing, when I was still involved in poetry, I was doing a poetry workshop and was staying in Rosebank, and I came home for supper and she's not home. And I'm phoning and I'm like, dude, where are you? She's like, no, I'm coming. When she pitches up, she walks in the door and she gives
Drops
me
the test.
that test. And I'm like, what does it mean? You when you look at something and you stop
Doesn't
seeing,
make sense.
Like, it shows you on the side, but I didn't even see that. It's like, no.
Oh, it's like it's just a stick.
Yeah, I was like, okay, I see the colors. What does this mean? It's like, no, we're pregnant. And I mean, we wanted
To have the child.
We wanted to have a child. So it wasn't, it was, it was everything that comes with expecting the confusion, it's, okay, now we're doing the classes, we're doing this, we need to get that, we need to do all of those things. So like I said, I've always wanted children. So it was just like...
I'm happy it's happening now.
Yeah.
So were you... okay, actually, what kind of a dad were you when your kids were born? Both of them, actually.
I don't know.
This is you now in retrospect.
Yeah, I mean, look, it was always assumed that I would be the easygoing one and my wife would be the strict one. And it's the opposite. And I think it's still the case to a certain extent. in retrospect, yeah, I mean, I've always been kind of, I view the world, despite having worked in creative spaces, I view the world very logically.
The economics in you comes out.
Yeah, and for me, it's like it's about boundaries, it's about consistency, it's about precedent. Like that's how I view the world. That's how I interact with the world. And I guess my children have struggled with that, especially my son. And it's also about personality. One thing one of my other little lines is that if we allow them, our children help us help us become better people. But you need to be introspective. You need to be aware, and that's what I've tried to do over the years.
Dude, I fully believe in that.
So yeah, like I'm by no means perfect, but I believe this, and a friend of mine actually reiterated it to me the other day. All we're doing is the best that we can, and all I'm doing is the best that I can, and it comes with. I mean, in my family, we've had tough moments, especially in terms of my relationship with my son, because also I'm a chip of my father's. I'm a chip of the old block, and
correct.
he's the third generation. It's like somebody who said, like my wife was saying, my father always wanted to have the last word, and I always want to have the last word, and my son always wants to have the last word. And when you put that together, it can create interesting.
It's the same cloth.
But it's an ongoing journey, right?
Yeah.
And like I said earlier, I was fortunate enough to live long enough with my father to understand that he was a human being, not perfect, flawed, and that's all right. He always did the best that he could for us. I may look at it and go, it wasn't good enough, but he did to the best of his ability. He did the best that he could.
With what he had.
Yeah, and for that, as an adult now,
You get it.
Even before he passed, I get it. I respect it. I'm grateful for it. Right? I'm grateful for what he did do. Because it's molded me into the person that I am today, living the life that I'm living. And I always say, I hope that one day my son will be able to look back, because I do everything in the interest of my family.
Yeah.
I've structured my life that way, sometimes to my own detriment.
Something has to give.
Yeah. But I just hope that one day they'll be able to look back and go, do you know what?
I get it.
Like, yeah, he did the best that he could. He wasn't perfect, and I think he messed up there, and I think he messed up there. But by and large,
the intention, I think, is what's important.
So for me, success as a father will be my children looking back and going, he did the best that he could with what he had.
Yeah.
And he provided us with the tools, emotional, mental, spiritual, whatever it is.
Which are things you're doing intentionally.
To be able to build the life that we want to build. I'm not about dictating what route you must take. I'm also not about you go sit in a job, work for whatever number of years to retire.
Get a certificate.
Like if that's what you want and you know why you want it, then cool. Like I'll support you on it.
Yeah.
But it's not I was always going to go to university. There was no option that I was not going to go to university. For me now with my children, it's like the way the world is, decide what it is that you want to do. Then we can decide how to get you there.
Yeah.
And if it involves university,
Because you need to scale up. That's the word.
if it involves university, great. If it doesn't involve university, I'm not also not going to sit here and go,
I'm forcing you that way.
yeah. So, yeah, I mean, that for me is, and so success as a parent will actually be determined by my children.
How they turn out.
How they turn out and how they feel about it. And I mean, you talk about dope black dads, and I told you the other day I've been part of the group and I've left the group twice, and I'm no more part of the group.
Yeah.
But once we had this there was a discussion around what is success as a father. And somebody was like, okay, I'm providing for my children. I give them everything they need. Therefore, I'm successful as a father. And my approach and my view is to always do the best that I can in terms of raising them with the values and principles that are important to me, and to provide them with the tools to tackle the world. And the lives that they live will be a measure of my success.
To that point, because obviously I only have my firstborn now, and how I'm going to measure my success is basically around that. When I look at him years later and him speaking back to me and say, because I can't say what I've been giving him through the years, whatever it may be, financial, emotional, whatever. I can't say and stand here on the podium and say, guys, I've done it.
Yeah.
I will only know at the end. But in this journey, I'm going to do my best, which I think is what possibly is best for him, until he can start to communicate better and say, no, but I want this. And then we can have a discussion. But the measure, I don't think you can actually measure it in the journey.
Absolutely.
You can't.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, when my father passed away, it had me reflecting on things.
Yeah.
Right? So we have things. And then, when somebody passes, then you have the discussions around where the things go.
Yeah.
Like, who do the things belong to? Like in a will, there's a house, there's a car, there's a this, there's that. Who do these things belong to, right? And for me, the thing that comforted me and my realization was my father's legacy is in us.
It's his.
So the life that I live, the fact that I'm here today, I'm able to have this conversation with you. You feel like I have enough value to offer to invite me to come and have this conversation with you. That's the legacy of my father, because it's
Yeah. I get you.
It's how he raised me and what he taught me.
Correct.
And the tools that he passed on to me that have enabled me to reach this point where I can sit and then have a conversation around the different things we've talked about.
Yeah.
And go out into the world and do the things that I do. Right. That for me
That's the legacy.
That's for me is my father's legacy.
Versus the material stuff.
Because the material stuff, I mean, we all say it, right? But we still don't necessarily practice. Like, we're going to leave all of this stuff behind.
And it might not mean anything to the person who you give it to.
And the most important thing, for example, my father left his books for me.
Which you value.
Which I value, but they're all still sitting in Lesotho. I have a lot of books. I collect books. But I also recognize that, when I'm gone, like I'm spending all this money on these things, but when I'm gone, if my family decide, we don't actually want these, I'm not sitting and going, oh, they're going to sell these things, and therefore I'm losing stuff. It's like, no, I got them because they give me fulfillment and pleasure.
For you.
While I'm here in this physical realm. Once I'm gone,
they will do as they please.
I'm not sitting going, you have to do this, you have to do that.
You can't threaten them up.
Yeah.
It's not going to work.
Yeah.
I think we're going to close shortly, but what's the hardest thing about being a dad?
What's not hard, Chief? What is not
Bella,
hard?
you dealing with a different heart. I'm dealing
Yeah.
with another heart.
Like I always tell people I don't miss that.
Yeah. What? Where I am.
Yeah, I don't miss where you
dude.
are, but where you are
tough,
feels
though.
so much simpler. Eh? Like yeah, things were simple then. Like now I'm dealing with human beings.
Your firstborn, what, 16?
16,
Second born?
17 this year. She's 12 and
Yeah.
13 this year.
So you're dealing with teenagers at their peak.
Yeah, and I'm like my daughter, like I'm watching my daughter go. Like I'm having to wait because she's doing her hair and she got a little vanity case and some makeup and stuff for Christmas because that's what she wanted. And I'm watching her, like I've watched her over the last 8 months just become a teenage girl. And not in terms of the numbers, but just in terms of how she carries
How
herself.
she presents herself now.
How she interacts with, at school, all of that sort of stuff. Right? And I've been through it with my son, and it's a different experience. And it's a different experience because they're two different personalities.
Correct.
And then you add, like, there's gender and all of that, but as a starting point, it's kind of two different personalities. And I'm having to adjust. And figuring out how to adjust. And I mean, like I said earlier, like trying to adjust with my son has been difficult, is probably the most difficult thing. And it's a work in progress.
And you saying, I must adjust. So you can see how you figure out this new way of relating to him.
And it's a constant thing. It's like when they're young, they talk about the terrible twos, right?
Yeah.
But I just found that like every 2 years or so, there's a shift.
Something
So every 2 years, they're going through a major shift and you're having to try and figure out
where they are now.
And how you must be. And that doesn't stop, right? It's a constant, just when you think you got it down,
The shift comes
they
in.
flip it on you. So I would say, for me, that's probably the hardest part. And then also being able to kind of step back and let go.
Don't have a tight grip.
Yeah. Because at various stages you kind of go, okay, you have to experience it. Like I can't do
Can't
anything.
shield you from everything.
I can't do everything for you. I can't fix everything for you. And my wife used to have a quote on the fridge. This was when my son was young. It was like the hardest. What is it? The hardest. I'm paraphrasing, but it was like the hardest part of being a parent is when your child has their heart broken for the very first time.
Yeah.
Because that's the first time you cannot fix it.
And you see him broken.
Yeah. But you cannot fix it. There's nothing you can do.
Time must do its thing.
To fix it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah.
No, we're closing.
I'd say that for me is kind of the hard part because you're constantly having to figure it
Realign.
out. Yeah.
Best thing about being a dad?
I mean, I think it's hard to articulate. I mean, I consider being a parent, and I'm not a religious person, but being a parent is kind of the greatest blessing you could have. For me, so it's not for everyone. Right?
Yeah.
But for me, my children are my reason. Like, when things can be hard, I could be doing things that I don't want to do, but at the end of the day, I will do them willingly, and I will sacrifice willingly, and I'll compromise willingly for my children. I mean, I was telling you, my son is going on a European tour, and I am so grateful for the fact that the opportunity came at a time
Yeah.
when I could give him that. I could give him
make
that.
sure that you
I could-
support him
I
fully.
could give him that experience. At any other time, I wouldn't have been able to do it.
It would have
right?
taken away from him.
He even assumed that it wouldn't be possible in the beginning. So when he heard about it, he didn't even talk to me about it because he just assumed
It's not going to happen.
the way life has been. Because life has been like, I work for myself. I have been through COVID. I've accumulated certain debts through businesses, particularly in Lesotho over the years, that I've been grappling with for the last 10 years. And so because he has a sense of
What's
the situation,
happening? Yeah.
he assumed that he wouldn't be able to go on the
Put
trip.
that pressure on you as well.
And I'm the one who went, oh, there's an information session for this thing. Why don't you tell me about it? I'm like, let's go. And when we got there, I'm like, do you know what? You're paying off over a period. I'm like, where I am now, it's doable.
We'll figure it out.
And so the fact that now he's going on this trip, that's been, so like the last couple of days, that's been how I've been feeling, like a little proud of myself that I could
Give him that as well.
that I could give him that opportunity to experience, and I traveled a lot as a child, so I've always lamented the fact that I haven't been able to travel with my children as much because I know the value of travel. And I used to get put on a plane alone at 5 years old to go to relatives in Germany. Right? So I have a particular understanding of myself within context of the whole world, as opposed to the little space that we occupy.
That we live in.
So I'd say those are the things that
bring joy.
That bring joy. But it's just multiple things. I mean,
Of
I'm
course,
sure you do
of
it.
course.
At night, when your child falls asleep, go and look at them sleeping. I don't care who you are, as a parent. Go look at them sleeping. If you want to know what the greatest thing about being a parent is, greatest thing about being a father is, whatever it is that you're feeling as you're standing there looking, that's it. I can't put it into words for you.
I do it even when he's playing. Like he's here playing, and I'm like, snap! I actually managed to do this, and this guy's so happy, and he's doing nothing special. He's just playing.
So that's
that. Yeah,
that's I'd say is the kind of greatest thing about being a father.
In closing, Kojo, any advice for young men like myself, fathers?
Good luck.
And
not advice. Good luck. Hotla loka, as they say.
Hey, gents. We're thinking this guy's gonna drop some pearls of wisdom, but hey, it's also, it's just as good.
I think
good luck.
I think it's about just try to do the work on yourself, man.
It's about you. Hey?
Yeah, it
starts with you.
Yeah, exactly.
I like that.
Know that, like I said before, they allow us to be better people if we allow them to. So it's to not be so set in your ways that you don't benefit from what it is that they're bringing to your world and your space. And it requires reflection. It requires awareness. And I have an ego like everybody else. I wouldn't necessarily, like, while I'm grappling with it, I'm not going to necessarily say it to the people.
Yeah.
But in my corner, in my quiet moments, I will sit and kind of go, okay, well, I do this, or I approach things this way. Is this the best for this situation and this child and this person and my family? So I think it's be self-reflective. That's the best, only advice I can really give.
Ladies and gents, to my first longest podcast today. Thanks to Kojo Baffoe for our longest one. Ladies of SA, we out.